Hi, what's up? This crazy story happened to me a couple of years ago, maybe like 5. It was a weekday a little after 8 a.m. and my boyfriend needed something from Walmart, so I went with him there. When we got there, he entered the store before me, and we went our separate ways down the aisles. A few minutes later, I'm standing in the makeup aisle looking at the nail polish, and a middle-aged man walked behind me. You don't see too many men in the beauty aisle, so I took notice of him. I remember thinking to myself of different reasons he could be in the aisle. Cotton balls? Cross-dresser? Something about him felt off though. He stayed in the aisle as long as I did. When I left, he left. He also didn't grab anything either. I went down a couple more aisles and he would pass behind me in each one. Sometimes he would stop and, quote-unquote, look at something in the aisle. The only aisle he didn't follow me into was one where a Walmart employee was stocking product. I made sure to linger in that aisle and hoped he would move on. The whole time he was walking back and forth by the aisle. I thought maybe he was a secret shopper keeping an eye on me. There was almost no one else in the store at that time, so it would make sense that I was targeted by a secret shopper. Why would he keep watching me when I'm in an aisle with an employee though? Either way, it was obvious the creep was following me and watching me. About 10 minutes later, I ran into my boyfriend as I was heading to a different area of the store. The guy was still following me, and when he saw me stopping to talk to my boyfriend, he immediately turned around and turned down the closest aisle. I told my boyfriend that the weird guy was following me, but he also thought it was a secret shopper. I shopped one more aisle before checking out. This time the man didn't follow me, but as I was heading to the cash registers, he popped again. He stood there at the end of an aisle just watching. I could feel his eyes on me, a prickling sensation running down my spine. My heart pounded as I clutched my basket tighter and tried to shake off the feeling of unease. I glanced around for my boyfriend, but he had already headed to the checkout line. The man lingered at the edge of my vision, a shadow that refused to leave. I quickened my pace, moving towards the self-checkout area, hoping that the presence of other customers and employees would take him off me. As I scanned my items, I kept looking over my shoulder, kinda expecting him to be right behind me. Each beep of the scanner was a reminder of my racing thoughts. Why was he following me? What did he want? Finally, I finished and rushed to the exit where my boyfriend was waiting. I glanced back one last time and saw the man standing near the entrance, his gaze still fixed on me. My boyfriend took my hand, and we hurried out of the store, with the automatic doors sliding shut behind us. The drive home was quiet. My boyfriend tried to reassure me, suggesting that it was probably nothing, maybe just a weird coincidence. But my mind just raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. When we got home, I double-checked that the doors were locked and the windows were closed. I even peeked through the curtains to make sure no one was outside. Days passed, and the initial fear began to fade, replaced by a cautious vigilance. I avoided going out alone and stuck to busy areas when I did. My boyfriend continued to reassure me, but I could see the concern in his eyes. He started walking me to my car in the mornings and picking me up from work in the evenings. A week later, I was at home alone, while my boyfriend was working late. I was watching Breaking Bad on the couch when I heard a noise from the front porch. And then it came again. A soft, deliberate knock. I froze with my breath catching in my throat. The knock came again, louder this time. I crept to the front door and peered through the peephole. My heart sank. It was him, the man from the store, standing on my porch with his face partially hidden by a baseball cap. I backed away from the door quickly. How the fuck? Should I call the police? My boyfriend? So I reached for my phone with shaking hands and I called 911 and whispered my situation to the dispatcher. I was hiding in the back part of the house with a kitchen knife, and minutes later, I heard the sound of sirens approaching. The man must have heard them too because he turned and disappeared into the night just as the police car pulled up. I opened the door and greeted the officers, and I got my relief. I gave a detailed description of the creep that was on Walmart that day and the events that happened over the past week. They assured me they would patrol the neighborhood and keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. They also suggested installing a security system for added protection, 'cause I didn't have any. The following days were a blur of installing cameras, motion detectors, and stuff around the house. My boyfriend took time off work to stay with me, and the police increased their presence in the area. One evening, as I reviewed the footage from the new security cameras, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There he was, that douchebag lurking in the shadows at the edge of our property, just beyond the reach of the streetlights. He had been watching us all along. I called the police again, and they arrived really quick, but the man was gone by the time they got there. They promised to increase their patrols again. In the weeks that followed, the sightings of the man became less frequent. The police presence in the neighborhood seemed to have deterred him, and life slowly began to return to normal. My boyfriend and I tried to move on, but the memories of that summer are still too much for us. We are already preparing to move out to the Bay Area, and we're really excited. Even now, I find myself glancing over my shoulder sometimes, checking the locks twice, and always avoiding empty aisles when I shop. The experience left a mark on me, a constant reminder of how quickly normal day at Walmart can turn to hell. My name is Katie, and I used to work at Walmart as a stalker. There was this particular night when I thought it would be just another night shift at Walmart, but it had a really creepy turn. I had been working there just for a few months. That night, I clocked in as usual, prepared for another uneventful shift. Keep in mind that the store was closed, there was no one inside, and the doors were locked. Just me and my songs on Spotify. I made my way to the back of the store, passing the clothing section with its neatly arranged racks and the grocery aisles with their orderly rows of cans and boxes. Everything was in its place, waiting for the next day's rush of customers. A section that I really liked was the kids one. That's full of toys. It makes me remember my childhood a lot. That section was the one I would start my restocking for the night. As I started to restock the shelves in the kids section, the silence was suddenly broken by an odd sound. It sounded like a laugh from a freaking kid. I paused, holding a box full of Barbies, straining my ears to listen. It also sounded like a ball bouncing gently against the floor. I dismissed it at first, thinking I could be just tripping, 'cause I was listening to music on my headphones. But then, I heard it again, a soft sound of a ball, followed by another laugh. This time, it was unmistakable. It immediately sent a chill down my spine and I stood up, looking around. But the aisles were empty, the shelves were still. It was then that the whole thing started. I decided to investigate, pushing my cart aside and walking toward the source of the sound, which was really close to the kids section. There, in the middle of the floor, was a brightly colored rubber ball. It was perfectly still. I looked around. My eyes scanned the shelves and the empty space between them, but there was no one in sight. So I bent down to pick it up and placed it back on the shelf where it belonged. As I resumed stocking the shelves, a soft giggle echoed through the aisles. I froze in that same place I was. It sounded like a little girl, but that couldn't be possible. The Walmart was closed. I looked around, trying to pinpoint where the sound had come from, and then I saw a flicker of movement, a small shadow darting across the end of the aisle. My pulse quickened, and I felt an even bigger chill creep down my spine. "Hello!" I called out, but there was no answer. I walked toward where I thought I saw the shadow really slowly. When I turned the corner, there was nothing. The longer I stayed in the kids section, the heavier the air seemed to grow, so I moved to the next aisle. The silence was oppressive. As I continued stocking, the giggling returned. and when I turned in its direction, there, at the far end of the aisle, I saw a glimpse of a little girl in a yellow shirt, her hair in loose curls, darting out of sight. "Hey!" I called. I rushed to where I had seen her. When I reached the end of the aisle, she was gone. I looked down the adjacent aisle, but no sign of her. My mind raced. Who was she? How did she get in here? I felt a mix of fear and curiosity pulling me forward. I walked slowly down the next aisle, this time without any music. And as I turned another corner, I swear, I caught a glimpse of her again, just a flash disappearing around the next bend. The giggling was clearer now. I reached the end of one aisle and found another small ball on the floor. That one was green, and it also hadn't been there before. I picked it up scared as shit and continued searching for her. I needed to see what that was either way. I began to notice that some toys and items were scattered on the floor, things that hadn't been there before. Dolls, toy cars, stuffed animals, stuff like that. In one of the aisles, I found a small, colored ball identical to the one I had seen earlier, sitting in the middle of the floor, perfectly still. How the hell it moved from one aisle to another like that? I rounded another corner and froze in my tracks. At the end of the aisle next to the kids section, standing between the shelves, was the unmistakable figure of a little girl. Yellow shirt, her dark hair in loose curls around her shoulders. In her hand, she held the same colored ball I literally just had seen, gently rolling it between her fingers. My heart pounded in my chest as she stared at me with blank eyes. She looked so real, man. "Hello," I called out, scared as shit. The girl looked up at me with her eyes wide and curious. She didn't speak, didn't move, just watched me with an unsettling calmness. I took a step forward, asking, "Are you lost?" Still, she didn't respond. And then again, she looked to the next aisles and walked over there. She disappeared. I couldn't see exactly where she went. Then I had enough. I called the 2 security guards that were outside and told them everything. We searched for that girl the whole night, literally. But nothing. And as far as I'm concerned, no one has ever seen this little girl at this Walmart, or any weird stuff like this except for me. To this day, I still can't help but wonder if that was really a ghost or a real girl who disappeared like a ghost. I'm just really glad I found a better job now. I'm telling you, some things are just not meant for you. So, I work at this Walmart that's like 30 minutes from my house in LA. I work here alongside a few close friends, Mark and Lola, which for sure makes my job a whole lot better, and it keeps us sane through the hours. This is about one specific night. As the night progresses, our routine begins. We navigate the aisles with practiced ease, scanning items, restocking shelves, and occasionally pausing to smoke a cigarette outside or watch some YouTube videos. Stuff like that. But speaking of that, that night was a nightmare. Because as we went outside to chat and smoke in our break, we noticed something really, really weird. All the doors were shut. Literally. We were locked inside. Nobody of us know what the hell was going on, so we began to try to think. Mark was thinking about the possibility about being some evil person that was around us, someone that would like to do terrible stuff against us and just locked all of us inside. There was a horrible tension in the air, and we began to try to calm ourselves down. As the initial shock wore off, Lola suggested that we should check the security office for any clues. We made our way through there, with the fluorescent lights flickering ominously above us. That silence was unnerving, the worst kind of silence I've ever experienced for sure. When we reached the security office, we found the door slightly opened. Mark pushed it open cautiously. The room was dark, and the monitors were displaying lots of angles of the store, but there was no sign of the security guard, which was really weird too. Lola flicked on the light switch, illuminating the room in a harsh glow. We started scanning the monitors, hoping to catch a glimpse of whoever might have locked us in. Suddenly, Lola gasped and pointed at one of the screens. There, in the frozen foods aisle, was somebody wearing a red hoodie. It moved slowly through the aisles. We couldn't see the face of that person. We couldn't make out any details, but the figure's presence sent us a really heavy chill. "We need to find a way out," Mark said. "I've never saw him scared like he was that night." "Let's try the loading dock," he whispered. We navigated the labyrinth of aisles, keeping our eyes peeled for any movement. As we approached the back of the store, we saw that the loading dock doors were also sealed shut. So our panic began to rise. Lola suggested we use the emergency exit, but when we reached it, the door wouldn't budge. It was as if someone had bolted it from the outside. Our options were dwindling, and the reality of our situation was starting to sink in. Just then, we heard the most terrifying thing of our lives. The intercom crackled, and a distorted voice echoed through the empty store. "Welcome, guests. Enjoy your stay." The voice was cold and devoid of any emotion. We exchanged frightened glances with wide-open eyes. "Dude, what in the fuck was that?" Mark said to us. "Okay, we need to stick together," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We can't let whoever this is separate us." We decided to head to the employee break room, hoping we could barricade ourselves in and come up with a plan. The break room was small and cluttered, but it felt like the safest place for us at the moment. We pushed a table against the door and huddled together, trying to figure out our next move. Mark pulled out his phone and tried calling for help, but there was no signal, and Lola's phone was the same. We couldn't believe it. It was already looking like a freaking horror movie at this point. It was as if the store was in a dead zone, cut off from the outside world. We sat there. "We need to do something," Lola whispered, breaking the silence. "We can't just sit here and wait." Mark nodded in agreement. "Yeah, but what's the plan? Every door we've tried is locked, and we don't know where that freak that was on the intercom is at now." I took a deep breath and said, "Maybe we can find a way to signal for help. Let's try to get phone signal from the roof." So we did just that. We went up the ladders and reached the roof. It was then that we saw him again. From up in the roof, we could see a portion of the Walmart interior. And there in a corner was a man standing wearing a red hoodie. "Yo, guys, look at right there," I whispered. Then Lola said, "Fuck no, it's him again. Who the hell is this guy?" And then Mark said, "F this. I'm gonna try to call the police again." And for our happiness, we got signal up there. We called 911 and they said they were coming very soon and told us to stay up in the roof until they catch this man inside. And after a few minutes, when the cops entered the Walmart, they got him. They saw us in the roof raising our hands and signaled for us to come down. We couldn't thank them enough. We were scared as hell, man. That man who had trapped us was identified as a former employee with a grudge against the store, for whoever knows the reason. He had planned the entire ordeal, hoping to scare us as some weirdo energy type of revenge. Or maybe even do worse, who knows. As we watched him being led away in handcuffs, we hugged each other, grateful to be alive and safe, and thanked the cops. That night changed everything. And despite all of that, we still work there to this day. I guess we just like to be there and work together at the same place. Yeah, crazy.